Hello, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, the weird little spinoff where the patrons of the Legendarium talk about books and topics Craig and the crew haven't gotten around to yet. I'm Little Red Book, and today I have with me Chesky
Hello.
and Lammy Lams, aka,
Aloha.
aka Mike from the Cosmere Deep Dive Podcast.
Also, that's me.
Today we are discussing The Last Colony by John Scalzi, the Old Man's War series. Spoilers for both Old Man's War and the Ghost Brigade start now. But before we get into that, on a 5-star scale, how would you rate this book? And also, do you rank this book within the series?
4.9. I think it's my favorite book of the six that are out so far.
There's 6? I thought
Yeah,
there was
there's
only
6.
4. Oh dear. I got myself into another one of those situations.
Hopefully there's going to be a 7th someday, but I haven't heard any word on that yet. I think it's my favorite of the 6 so far. Like, none of them are bad in any sense of the word, but I think this one does what it's trying to do the best.
What about you, Chesky?
I actually am taking the opposing argument this time.
Oh,
This
go
was
on now.
probably my least favorite of these 3 books so far that we've read. I would probably just give it 3 to 3.5. I like Scalzi. This book just didn't do it for me, and I have multiple reasons why we could talk about a little later. That's where I'd rank it.
Oh, wow. So I would give it a 4.5. It is the favorite book for me that we've read so far, which is only 3. And now I apparently have 3 others I have to read. But he really grew into, I don't want to say grew as a writer because he's been a writer for a long time, but he really grew into what the story was doing. So I'm with Lammy on this, Chesky. I'm sorry. You're all by yourself.
That's okay. When I make my points, they will stand strong enough.
Okay.
You don't have to change your mind. You just have to rethink it.
Okay, so we all agree that choice was the major theme of the last book. What do you think the theme of this book is?
I guess I'll jump in here first. I would say communication was the like, if I've got to do a single word theme, communication.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would, before you said communication, single word, I was just thinking they talked a lot about he talked a lot about like the right to do things versus the authority to do things and kind of sticking to your beliefs or sticking to what you think is right. But I do agree that if you had to sum it all down to one, it's communication.
Wow. So I asked this question and I don't have an answer for it. So I really wanted to hear what you guys were going to say. The theme that stood out to me the most, I would say, is what is home? What does that word mean? But it's not the main theme of the book. And even though it's the thing that stood out to me the most. So I think communication is probably very good. I also like the idea about authority versus right. And I just think this book has a lot going on, so it's hard to settle on one theme. You are in charge of the recap, Lammy.
Yay, I get to do a recap. Okay, so I started writing this just sort of going through and summarizing what happened. And then about halfway through, I realized I was just doing bullet points like Dave does in my podcast. And then I decided to embrace that and go back and change all of my stuff to bullet points. So here we go. Goat meeting. Nap. Green man from space. So, beginning of the book, John Perry has a meeting with the 2 most annoying people in the village of New Goa and their goat. Well, one of them's goat. It's complicated. There's goat stuff.
There's a lot of goats.
Yeah.
At least 2.
He follows us up with taking a nap for like the second half of his day. Like that's just his whole day is one meeting followed by a nap.
Mm-hmm.
That's his job.
Yep. It's a pretty awesome job, I gotta say.
There's some good back and forth sniping between him and his assistant.
Love his assistant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he then goes out and catches up with the town constable, who he kisses in public. Said constable complains about it. Said constable being Jane Sagan, formerly of the CDF Special Forces, currently his wife living on New Goa. They head home. They are met on the road by their daughter Zoe Booten. Someone else want to give a try at the pronunciation there, because I know that's not right.
I always just said like Bowden, basically.
I don't
Okay.
know. I'm sorry.
Who was effectively the living MacGuffin of the previous book.
That's true, she was.
I'd go into it, but you kind of just need to read the whole previous book to get her whole deal. She lets them know that there's a green man from space at their house who is John's former commanding officer, who offers them a job to go lead a new colony. They talk about it, then they accept, and then we fast forward. There's this whole presentation about the planet they're going to. It's very informative. It's very useful. John checks on the supplies. We get a whole list of like everything that they're getting. It gets kind of granular there. And then there's a very cryptic conversation with Zoe's Oban bodyguards / caretakers / friend people, companions.
It's weird.
Where they basically tell John that they know stuff, and they can't tell him anything because he doesn't know stuff, but they know stuff.
Which is the whole book. I mean, that happens all throughout the book. Like, somebody knows something, we can't tell you because we don't know if you know it.
Then dodgeball.
That was genius, by the way. We will talk about that.
The presentation was a ruse. That whole interesting and informative presentation, completely useless. Different planet. Nobody knows anything. They're now trapped there with, like, on this complete mystery planet that they have very little information on, along with the crew of the ship, who are very unhappy about this.
I mean, they're all very unhappy.
Yeah, nobody's really happy, but like the ship's crew are extra special unhappy because everybody else agreed to colonize a planet. It's a different planet, but they still agreed to colonize a planet. The ship's crew did no such thing.
True.
The ruse was a deception. So we find out that this was an intentional different planet. It's all meant to keep them hidden. The lunch was nanobots. Jane's been remade into special forces, which is apparently a thing that can happen now.
I mean, science, right? Not magic, it's science.
Yeah. She has a lunch with General Xylard, who is, you'll remember, the head of the CDF Special Forces. And he slips her a roofie.
Not that kind of roofie.
Yeah.
I mean...
he slips her some nanobots.
Yeah. On a scale from 1 to functional plumbing, John and Jane are rather unpopular colony leaders for a while after landing. After they land, John and Jane don't want anybody to actually leave the initial tent city that they put together because there might be dangers. There definitely are some sort of wild animal. Everybody has to pee in buckets, and nobody likes it. Also, the whole place smells like armpit.
An oft-repeated joke.
Fanties and weird rats and werewolves, oh my. So there's a variety of life forms on the planet. The three that we get any sort of focus on are the Fanties, which are similar to but entirely unlike elephants. They're just like large herd animals that migrate. Weird rats could be baby. We don't really get much on these. They could be like baby Fanties. We don't know. Or they're just weird rat analogs. They have 4 eyes, and they're all stretched out.
Everything does, though. They all have 4 eyes.
Mm-hmm. Zoe tries to tame one. It lasts for about an hour.
And werewolves.
Werewolves. Those show up a little bit later, but those are sort of the big middle of the book plot.
I have things and thoughts. Go ahead.
Rest in peace, Hiram Yoder, Space Mennonite.
Oh.
Yeah, one of the sadder scenes of the book.
Rip too soon.
Yep, the leader of the Space Mennonites, which is a legit thing in this book, Space Mennonites. Yeah, he gets surrounded by the werewolf people things, and one of them kills him. Moving forward. Good news, bad news. Bad news. Every single alien species wants to destroy this colony and will find its location sooner rather than later. Good news, you can have your PDAs back.
Yeah.
Which most of the colony considers it about an even trade, so, you know.
And after they went to all that work to build the special black box?
Well, without
John
the black
says
box, they're dead a lot earlier.
John
That's true.
says some bad words. The bad words in question are an offer to General Gao to surrender. He shouldn't have done that. Boom times 412. The deception was a trap. The whole point of the colony was to lure out the Conclave's attack fleet and blow it all up. We skip forward a little more. Attack, attack, attack. There are a couple of attacks on the colony. General Gao claims that aren't from the Conclave, just some alien species out there that are, trying to monopolize on a situation. But those mostly go fine. Only a few people die. Deus ex Zoe. So the Oban takes Zoe away, and then she comes back right at the last possible second with a special fancy magic machine to fix the fight.
It's not magic, it's science.
No,
It's
it's
very
totally
clear
magic.
about it.
So there's a big fight with magic, and magic happens, and then they win because magic.
Yep, pretty much.
Hey Earth, we're back, and we brought presents.
Quite a lot of them, too.
Yeah, this was a cool
Well
scene.
done, Lammy.
No, I got one more. How is Babby formed? How is Babby formed? How girl get pregnant?
Oh, that's funny. That's the internet right there.
And that's the book. That's what happened.
Yep, pretty much.
So I did skate over like a huge chunk of the middle because there wasn't there was a lot of good character work, but there wasn't like a lot of plot stuff happening.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only so much you can talk about building tents and purifying your sewage.
I mean, I was into all of it, but I also played
Right.
Oxygen Not Included, which is basically that gamified.
I mean, I like The Martian too, and there's a lot of that in The Martian.
Yeah.
So, favorite characters. Go, Chesky.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
Lammy has
talked a lot.
Oh,
way,
Go Chesky.
way
he
too
has.
much.
Favorite characters. I'd have to say that my favorites again are John and Jane. I like them the most. I had only minor complaints about John, and I liked his assistant, Savitiri. She was great. General Gao is up there, and the commander of the Special Forces, General Lizard, is what I call him.
Literally, every time I read his name, I thought lizard because you can, or lizards, because if you rearrange the letters, it's lizards.
No,
I'm
they're my
pretty
favorite.
sure that was on purpose too. It would not surprise me if it was on purpose. Jane, but I also really liked Harem, the space Mennonite. I really like Zoe. It's fun to watch her grow up and how much she's grown since the last book.
She does act like a real kid.
Yeah, she does. She's a real kid.
Well, that helps that, John Scalzi has his own teenage daughter that he could, base things on and also ask her about. So I have to assume that Athena Scalzi shares a number of things with Zoe Booten.
Maybe he's just really experienced with kids in general.
Could be. So my favorites were Savitri and Jane. John gets to be a little much. He's too competent at too many things, I think.
That's fair.
He's a bit much, but
And feel like John really did anything in the book. I mean, most of the time he's out talking and then nobody listens to him and he has to do it anyway. And then he goes into another meeting and he's told you can't know anything. And somebody else does the work, and then he goes to another meeting and he's told you can't know anything. I didn't feel
I
like
don't
he
know.
did that much.
That
but-
opening scene or the whole first chapter is absolutely hilarious. And he does solve the problem.
The first chapter is great. I loved him in that one. It was more later.
Anyway, sorry, Lammy.
no, that's it.
Okay.
Savitri and Jane, they're the best in this book.
So how do you feel about, I'm going to say this wrong, and you guys are going to laugh at me. Trujillo? Trujillo.
Manfred Trujillo.
How do you guys feel about this character?
He played his part well in the book. He was a competent statesman who wanted to be in charge, didn't get in charge. He didn't do anything like horribly wrong. He listened to John when John said, hey, don't do this thing. He didn't go out and do the thing like a certain other statesman who wanted to be in charge and messed up and got everybody killed.
I mean, I felt like he was at least initially being set up to be a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
He was, and John assumed that he was, but we got a nice view of someone who is more than one thing. Like, yes, he's egotistical and power hungry and wants to be in charge of the colony, and also cares about the colony's best interests and will put aside his own self-interest for that goal.
So even though I don't list him as one of my favorite characters, in some ways he is because he's interesting. Yeah, he's kind of a jerk, but at the same time, he wants success for his colony that he's been planning for years and years and years. And in a way, you can understand why he would be ticked. His leadership was basically taken away from him because some jerk just didn't like him. And we're like, we're gonna pull these weirdos off this other planet and put them in charge. Ha ha ha. Take that.
But it was all a ploy from General
No,
Slizzer.
that part
that part was and wasn't.
taking away the leadership was just because that.
Well, but if that senator hadn't done that, General Slizzer probably would have done something anyway.
So Manfred was convinced that the personal revenge against him was like the highest level of how we're going to screw this colony. He vastly underestimated how unimportant he is in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I mean, basically, the whole colony was unimportant.
I had a whole list of things. It was a ruse, a deception.
Okay. How do you feel about the Oben's role in this book, especially regards to Zoe and concealing knowledge? Basically, they worship Zoe. She's like almost a goddess to them, and they share custody almost with John and Jane. They're required to share. They have these implants, and they share their Zoe with all of the Oben. Also, the stuff and the things with the knowledge and the not telling.
I found it odd that John, after all these years, underestimated how important Zoe is to the entire Oben, and just assumed that Hickory and Dickory were like whatever low-level Oben that could be spared for this, rather than, yeah, these two are extremely important to their people in and of themselves, and that's why they have this job.
Yeah, I liked that. That's how it was, even though John didn't, think that at the beginning. And I love the nicknames, because that is just their nickname for him, Hickory Dickory. Been singing a lot of Hickory Dickory Dock, so I just got a real big kick out of that.
In regards to the Oben not being able to say things, that was, I mean, on the one hand, it's a book with a plot, so if you have characters who know things, then obviously they can't say it.
Right.
That is a time-honored tradition.
I mean, that's every rom-com ever.
Yeah. I thought the reasons they had for not explaining it worked well with the Oben and their kind of non-conscious consciousness. And it's never like, well, that's just the Oben being dumb. And not parts of it were, but it was more in service to the plot. I felt that part made more sense to me.
That was actually the thing that bothered me the most, is that they couldn't tell. Why? Why can't you tell? That it made no sense.
Fit better with the theme of the book if they don't tell.
Yeah, it made me actively angry. I'm sorry. There were times where I was really mad.
The part that made me mad, more mad, frustrated was I felt like every time we switched characters, he was like, and then he told me what the plan was. Cut. And then he told me this. Cut. And then true. I said we're gonna do this. Cut. And I was like, like I get it. You want it to be a surprise. You want it to be exciting when it happens, but like over and over and over, every reveal in this book was withheld from me, and I was like, I just want, give me one of those.
Was that the basis for your didn't care for the book? Can we get into that?
Yeah,
I'd like to hear that.
I tell you why I didn't like the book. I did not like it.
Okay, this is making me so happy because Cesky is normally like so positive.
I'm it's still a good book. I'm not like so naying on it the whole way. It's just like,
can I take a guess?
Before you go ahead, take a guess.
Okay. Uh-huh. Were you going into this with the expectation that it was going to be yet another military sci-fi book? as that as like the base genre, and then it wasn't that.
That part that's not really my concern. Mine are actually a bit more writing oriented, which is surprising for me.
All right, I'm excited to hear this.
I am so excited.
So I didn't like the not surprises, being told there's a plan, but never getting to know the plan until after it's been put into effect. I did not like how much the story cut and jumped. It felt like it was a lot to me because I read it within a really short period of time, but it was you're going to read and then okay, a couple days to a couple weeks later, and that's yeah, whatever. I also felt this one was way too info dumpy on a lot of different things. Personal opinion, like I'm not.
I don't disagree.
Yeah,
It is info dumpy. Those
those
are
are
all good
fair
criticisms.
criticisms.
And
Yeah.
then I just with the name The Last Colony, this is the last thing. I thought it was either going to be a story about like they're going to form a colony and then it was like okay, now they're a lost colony. And then he tricked me and it's not a lost colony, it's a hidden colony. And then it's not a hidden colony, it's a found colony. And then it's not a found colony, it's a left out to die colony. I feel like there was way too much in this book. And if he had split it in two and been like, here's just you guys dealing with the Oban or the Conclave, getting resolved, and then the next I don't know where you would cut it. I just felt like there was too many short plots.
Oh,
Plot,
Chesky.
plot.
I have such good news for you.
Well, I just that it was like, okay, here's the plot. We got to survive for 2 years. Then it's like, here's a short plot. We have to like survive this fight for and then I just felt like they were too many short plots instead of like one much bigger plot for me.
I have incredibly good news for you.
I'm
This book
listening.
was split into two. The next book is the other half of this book.
so maybe it would have made more sense then, if I don't know. It just that's mainly my things I just didn't like about that.
I'm going to disagree with you on this last criticism. I thought it worked just fine.
Well, you're fine. You're allowed to be wrong again. So no
The
worries.
only thing that I wish there had been more of is the werewolves, and they just disappear from the plot. That's
Yeah,
my
like
only
that's what I'm
that's
saying
my
is like they're a big plot. That could have been more. We're actually setting up this colony and had it been its own whole book, and then the next book is like we're actually found and we're a trap and we're hidden. Well, that might have been too much for what the book is, but
Did you feel like there were like scenes missing in places?
yes.
yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So this is something I kind of wanted to get into because the second book is like those missing scenes. Or not the second book, the fourth book is like a lot of those missing scenes. Like I read these a long time ago together and like didn't dig into it to the minutia level.
Mm-hmm.
Just sort of read along and yeah, plot, yay. But in rereads, I notice very definite stuff where like stops and then the next thing starts. And there's stuff that happened between those that we don't get in this book. I just wondered if you guys doing a closer first read on this spotted that or not, or if it was just me filling in stuff because I've read the next book.
No, it really felt like I said, it was just jumpy. Like we were missing scenes or like there's stuff happening, and it's just the passage of time, which obviously you can't talk about the whole time. Like
Chesky,
you
you're
can't
gonna
spend the whole book about that. But I'm gonna what? Oh, let me say
you're
one
gonna
thing. The Colonial Union is very dumb, but I'm glad to see that their arc from the second book is paying off here, where they don't listen to special forces and they think they know what's best, even if they don't. They make bad decisions.
Okay, I feel
I
like Red
mean,
wants to say something, but then I have a response to that.
what I was gonna say is that you're gonna make me downgrade this book, and I'm very sad. And I can't believe it's you of all people for making me do that.
What I like if I love books and
I
when
know
I
you
don't
do.
like them,
I know.
I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, Lammy, hit me with your response here. I'm ready for it.
Okay, all of the leadership of the CDF is like north of 100 years old. Do you think that that's relevant to their refusing to like try new stuff and rethink battle strategies and
Oh,
not fight literally everyone in the entire universe at once.
don't get me wrong. I love the way that John Scalzi is portraying the CDF and the decisions he's having to make 100% sense. They're not a criticism at all. That is like a good strength for the book that these people they're the top. The brass does what the brass wants to do, and the soldiers just have to deal with it. And nobody wants to go to war with the entire universe except the top brass think it's the right idea. So that's what everybody does. So I love the portrayal of the CU. I'm just saying, like, those guys are just all dumb and should be shot and quartered, and General Slizzard should be put in charge, and then go from there.
Did you do any reassessing between books 2 and 3 about the CU being the bad guys? Or did book 3 sort of reinforce that rather than make you rethink it?
I just decided that the whole thing is power politics, and so there are no good people.
Except General Gao. He's a better one than most. He
I
might not be perfect, but he's a better than most.
I'm just saying that I'm trying to remember who said it. Somebody said once there are good men and there are great men, but there are no good great men. The
Mm.
idea being that there's a certain level of ruthlessness and
Well, to achieve great things is something you can't be good and do, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
that you have to almost compromise yourself morally in order to achieve what you need to achieve. So that's what I took from it. I don't know. What do you think, Lammy?
This reinforced my understanding of the CDF leaders as being just Disney evil, just cartoon twirling mustache villain evil.
I could definitely see differentiating it between the leaders in charge of the CDF being evil and the bad guys versus humanity being the bad guys,
Yes.
because that
Yeah.
distinction is drawn. That the CDF is the one who controls all the information, and they withhold a ton of it. They're not elected. There's really no check and balance on them aside from each other, and that's not healthy.
I mean, is Slizzard really evil?
I don't
I
count him as one of the top brass because even he says he's a second class citizen, or he was. He's just a soldier. He doesn't get to make the big decisions. He just has to follow through with them. Because his decision was not to go to war with the entire universe.
I'm still not going with Disney evil, but definitely not good actors in a lot of respects. The keeping of the information is really super upsetting. And
Communication.
yeah,
Yeah,
Communication is the theme.
communication.
you guys are right. And that's why I asked the question because I didn't have an answer. So the next question I have, I don't know. What do you think about the names of the planets like Roanoke and Huckleberry? Because when that was a red flag the second they said, we're going to do a colony called Roanoke. And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
really? Really?
huge red flag. I was
I
like,
mean,
that's way too telling.
John lampshades it like the moment they find out they're on a different planet. He's like, "Oh, I should have realized something was up."
I know. And I'm like, what are you doing? Don't name it. I'm editing, so it's okay.
Yeah. No, as soon as they named
Wait,
it
we can
Roanoke,
go blue in this? Yay!
No, no, we can't.
I
Back on
did
track.
like, yeah, I was gonna say I did like naming the planets after like Huckleberry and Mark Twain books and such. I thought that was a nice take. Like they're gonna have different names for all the colonies, but eventually, hopefully every author, that's one of the things that survives is like literature. That's an easy thing to pull names from. So I thought I like that. But in Croatoa, isn't Croatoa also like a failed colony of some kind? Just like
Uh,
Roanoke was?
that was what was carved onto a tree near what
Near
remained of
Roanoke.
Roanoke.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. So I thought it was just funny they did end up naming it Croatoa.
Um,
Funny or a little on the nose.
so here's my thinking regarding naming the colony Roanoke. Someone in the generals, like their whole meeting about this, thought that it was very clever, and nobody argued with him about the name. And so he went to lunch being very, very satisfied with himself after that.
Very satisfied with him.
And nobody was like, yeah, maybe not. Yeah,
Maybe I
but
should use my brain pal to do a general search in all literature for the word Roanoke and see if anything comes up that would give it away. No? I
Well,
guess that's too much to ask.
the next best name was Operation Blow Up the Conclave. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I was actually kind of irritated with John for not catching that. The colony is Roanoke, but I guess he doesn't have his brain pal anymore, so that's why he
Well,
didn't
and you
catch it.
have to remember, we're like what, like 100 to 200 years or less from like when Roanoke happened.
No, wait, 400.
Okay, okay, sure, 400, whatever. But we're still within like, it's we know about it, in
But we also know
John's
about the
time.
Roman Empire
Yeah, but
and
how
the
much
Babylonian
notice?
Empire.
And those are
I mean,
empires. Those are more than one city that like
that's true.
maybe
That's true.
existed for like a month.
Well, hold
I
up.
can't believe I'm having a fight with Chesky.
Hold up here. In John's defense, as far as we can tell in these books, nothing of significance happened on Earth between present day and his time, as far as like historical events beyond the one war we hear about, and like the
The
creation
space
of the
elevator.
CU and the jump drive. Like, that's it as far as like actual important events. There's nothing. They are in like a historical desert. So like him having learned about this in school because that was the last functional time when anything important happened. Yeah. Which is
We'll
like
see.
Star Trek has this problem a lot too, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
tough
does.
to future write history for something that hasn't happened yet. And
Yeah. Everybody on the Enterprise is like an expert in 20th century Earth history. But none of them know anything about what happens between that and like present day on the show, right?
right.
Right. This is
No.
true.
No, I liked the names. I thought he did really good job with naming everything.
I like that everything on the colony Huckleberry all had Mark Twain themed names. So they had like the Clemens Delta and things like that.
Yeah. And there's like a continent named Sawyer.
Why do you think Mark Twain is still relevant hundreds of years into the future? I have
Well,
an
we'll
answer
see.
for this, by the way.
I also, since I posed the question, I put some thought into it, and I've got also an answer. But Chesky, you looked like you were about to say something.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. All I was saying is I don't know how relevant he even is in this story. He just was picked to name a bunch of planets or named a colony after. I don't think he'd be. I mean, just as any author after so many years would be less relevant. Go ahead, tell me I'm wrong, Red or Lammy.
You want to go or you want me to go?
So one of the things we were talking about is the authority to do something versus the what is right. So Huckleberry Finn, you can say a lot about it. It uses words that we can't say anymore, that kind of stuff. But what the thrust of that book is, I everybody is telling me that this choice is a wrong choice. I disagree. I am going to do what I think is right, and not going to turn Jem in. Like that is what the book is about, and that is in a way what this book is about.
That
That's my answer.
is deeper insight than I have going on.
But it doesn't really answer the question of why this book would be relevant in
Because
John's.
that is no, it does because that is something that is a very deep truth. It deals with something that's very human, the same way Shakespeare is still relevant, and the same way that Greek myths are still relevant, and the same way that the Bible is still relevant, and people think about those things.
All right. I've got a sort of in-universe explanation, which is
Okay.
the first however many years of colonizing a planet, you still have PDAs and, electronic farming equipment and all of that. But the rough tech level of everyday life is kind of similar to Mark Twain times, basically. So that type of lifestyle that's depicted in, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, name a third Mark Twain thing.
I like to think that that was actually in your notes.
Like that is a like good depiction of what life is like for these colonists just day to day, and so it remains relevant. And also that there's like one guy at the CDF who's or at the CU who got to name stuff for this one planet, and he just went to town on it. Just Mark Twain, baby.
I just would imagine after so many years of this historical drought where nothing is happening, there'd be a ton of other fiction to try and crowd it out. Not saying that Mark Twain couldn't still be relevant. You guys have swayed me, but there'd be so much. I can't even imagine trying to read all those books.
There's a lot of books I haven't read, so it's okay. But I think that there is staying power to certain books. And when people talk about the classics, like reading a book that's over 500 years old is not hard to do in the sense that there I might have to cut all this because I'm now I'm sounding dumb, but Don Quixote is still relevant, and there's books that are just really old that are still relevant. Gilgamesh, for example.
Do you know anybody who's actually read Gilgamesh?
I've read Gilgamesh.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
that's
know
one
someone
person
who's
then.
read Gilgamesh.
Yeah,
I
now
was
I know somebody
assigned
who's read Gilgamesh, but taking you out of the equation,
it
neither
was
of us.
I was assigned it in college.
Oh,
And that's an old book
it is old.
that is also relevant. So let's talk about power politics. So I'm not going to say any of these names right. So I'm going to have one of you guys say it. But there's a bunch of power politics going on in this book.
Okay, I'll say names. Gao, Esser. I'm not certain on that one. Xylard, Rybicki.
So we've already talked about this a little bit, but how do we feel about how these people interplay? They all have different motives. They are all doing different things. Gao is trying to stop the killing, but Esser is trying to take over the conclave. And then Slizzard and Rybecki also have within the what's it called?
The
CDF.
CDF.
The CDF have different goals and are playing off each other. So does oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so how do you think that works in this book? Does it work well?
I mean, of the four listed, I feel like Rybicki is the one most abusing power.
Yeah, he's pretty well, I
I
don't
mean,
know though.
he's pretty low level. He doesn't have a whole lot of sway to abuse.
He is a general. He's got access to
Yeah,
the same information that the other higher ups have. He's just pretending he doesn't know anything.
I agree with that. What he does is very deceitful.
But I don't think he's one of the ones that's angling to fight every species in the conclave. I think those are being made by people above him, even.
I don't think that's the point. The point is that he's using his knowledge as a weapon because he is trying to move up in the hierarchy.
Listeners, you didn't hear it, but
Chesky
just shrugged.
Yeah, but Rybitsky seems to be one of the few generals who does have a conscience.
No,
A little bit.
disagree. No, I think Slizzard has way Slizzard. I think he has way more of a conscience. He doesn't tell Jane, but at least he gives her, even though there's a lot of problems with what he did, he knew that it was going to go down.
I never said that Rybicki was the only one with a conscience. I said he seems to have a little bit of a conscience because he does feel bad and try to help the colony, but is unable to because of all the other political maneuvering.
I don't know. What do you think, Lammy?
I get Esser. I don't get Rybicki.
I don't get Esser either.
If that follows.
Yeah, Esser just wants revenge and destruction and to be in charge. And power. Yeah, he's the easiest to understand. He's every megalomaniac who is charismatic. I'm going to do this, and you're going to follow me.
He thinks he could lead the conclave better than General Gao. He's wrong, but he thinks he could. So, yeah.
Yeah, so when I say I don't get him, I guess I meant more like he's really, really evil.
From his point of view, it's pretty easy for him to justify, like, I'm not evil. We made a conclave. They
Yeah,
chose
I
to
mean,
break the
well,
rules. They chose not to join. And then they just blew up our big fleet. I want
nobody who's
revenge.
evil is, like,
He
not
also
justifying their stuff. I
he
mean,
also had the backing of like a large number of conclave species.
Yeah,
that's
Like
true.
this dude has, I mean, again, he is wrong. His conclusions are incorrect, but he has good points and he has good reasons to believe them.
and I
So
feel like
Right. No,
he
he's believable.
I feel like he values the lives of like at least his people, the people he's fighting for, for the conclave. He's not like, oh well, screw the conclave. I'm in charge. I want to be the boss. He's like, I want to be the boss because of the to help theoretically down the line to be the one leading it. But like Lammy said, he is way off base on how to actually do
Right,
that.
right. And I think the way Gao uses power is the most admirable way to use it in a lot of respects. He really tries to be honorable, even though I think that what he's doing is wrong. And see, now we're going around in circles again because you're like, I get why he's it's good, whatever. It's like turning into a big mess. We,
Well,
ah, this is a
as I
hard
say,
topic,
all
and
right.
I'm like, no,
Gao is the impersonation of speak softly but carry a big stick. Is
right,
he speaks
yeah,
softly? He says, "Hey, we want to do this peacefully, and then if you don't comply, then we will kill you." There's a lot of discussion you could probably have on the legality of the conclave enforcing their will on people not in the conclave. That's a whole thing. At least Gao's trying. He's like, we waste all of our time on war. What if we all just live together? Like, we don't even need the ocean. Yet we like destroyed a whole planet just so the water dwellers couldn't live on it. He's been through it and he says, why does it have to continue this way? And I think, Red, like you pointed out earlier, he's trying to be a great man. And sometimes to be a great man, you have to accomplish hard tasks. Did he willingly, well, excitedly go to every colony to be like, I'm going to murder you if you don't all leave and listen to what I'm telling you? No, he was not happy about it. I don't,
and he tried to give him a way out,
he
but
did. He did give
I
him a
mean,
way out.
yeah, I don't
I
know. What do
mean,
you think,
at that
Lammy?
point, you're a willing combatant almost.
I have a question that's a slight divergence from this. If
That's fine.
Were you guys done with
I
Sure.
this
mean,
topic?
I feel like I opened a can of worms that I am not qualified to address.
I don't think anyone's qualified to really answer the intricacies of war and colonization, but what's your
Okay.
question?
How viable long term do you think Gao's colonization plan is? Whenever we find a new habitable world, then we just assign whatever species could go best there to go there. Potentially multiple together species that in the past have done terrible, terrible things to each other in this massive intergalactic war.
Well, I think that John Scalzi even talks about it in a smaller scale, where he has the 12 colonies or the 12 districts of colonies that are colonizing his planet, and none of them liked each other. Now, granted, it wasn't to the same level of like these other human colonists didn't murder your family and your friends and people, but he brings them all in together and they're able to work because their children, if they grow up, I think it could have success based on how it's run and how it's implemented. Now, if every planet you find just happens to be inhabitable for this one species and they get every single planet, that's not really going to work. It's going to take it down faster. If they were really fair about it and truthful and best of intentions, I think it could work really well. I think people would hopefully forgive those things sooner than later.
I think that it would very quickly turn into a hierarchy of species getting the best planets and the other species getting short shrift or getting subpar planets, even if you're mixing people together or species together. I don't, so it's semi viable.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to blow up at some point.
Yeah, I do too.
The example I was gonna put together was like, what if the Ray and the CU joined the Conclave, and since they have, complementary
Planet types.
biology, yeah, what if they got put on the same planet? The Ray, if you'll recall, just love eating human babies.
I think there would have to be a lot more there would have to be a lot more administration than just, oh, you guys are physically compatible with each other. They'd also have to work towards social compatibility, at least for a generation or three.
And then, presumably, the humans have also done horrible, horrible things to the Ray of an equivalent nature of eating human babies. Because, as we've seen, the CDF is what's the word I want to use?
Evil?
Yes, but in a different way. Like, words are gone. Nope. But yes, Red, I think you have you've touched the long-term issue, which is that corruption will set in because it's politics, and as a result, some species get better planets, some species get worse planets, and it eventually all falls apart.
So, Chesky, I just want to say that this is the fourth time cannibalism has come up with me.
It's not cannibalism, they're different species.
Eating of humans has come up.
If it was
You-
humans eating human babies, that would be cannibalism.
You are cursed, but have to agree with Lammy. Doesn't sound quite like cannibalism, but it's close.
I'm just saying, I've talked a lot about eating people. I don't understand
Mhm.
why it keeps happening to me.
If you'd quit bringing the Vray up, we wouldn't have to talk about it.
Oh, that was my fault.
Yeah, I
Decent
didn't
enough.
bring it up.
Sure.
And I didn't bring up cannibalism on the Martian episode either. I'm cutting all
Okay.
this.
I
So,
have one.
okay.
Sorry, one quick question before we get back to Red's list. Dragons versus slime molds. Which team are you cheering for in the dodgeball finals?
Dragons.
Yeah, sorry, it's got to be dragons as much as a good slime.
Traitors. Traitors. Slime molds for life.
I love the fact that they took the aggression and then they made these teams and they split everybody up so that the different colonies, so that the aggression could turn into a productive competition to get people together.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mhm.
It's like, it's better that we have our big fights over who wins the dodgeball tournament than over, I don't know. I know where I'm trying to go, but I'm not getting there, and I am so sorry. Somebody else want to try and reformulate that for me?
Dodgeball brings people together. It is the universal sport.
I like it.
Yep.
You know what? I actually want to change my answer on themes. Dodgeball.
Dodgeball. I'll stick with communication for a little bit of consistency.
People are going to be so confused.
Well,
Lammy
they'll
told me it
listen
was a
to-
book about dodgeball. So Zoe is Greek for life. Do you think this was an intentional choice on Scalzi's part? I will say yes, I do.
Yeah, I'm pretty indifferent to it, but I could see it for sure.
I will say yes, in as much as it applies to the Oban. Specifically the Oban. Zoe is representative of a lot of things that we equate to living beings for the Oban that they didn't have without, well, specifically
father.
the research into consciousness, but Zoe represents that.
And that was a better answer than mine. Anything else you guys want to say?
I want to say one thing. I am glad we got to see the Kansu again. I was missing them for my 2 books. And it's not weird or suspicious at all that they just happened to give Zoe this magic techno device. And it definitely won't cause, it won't like be a future plot point that the Kansu just happened to help out this time.
No, it definitely won't. That was telegraphed hard.
But I'm excited. I like the Kansu and I like their storyline that they're just so much more advanced than us, but they're still not just like, well, we're just going to blow up every planet you own just because. They have a weird reason
They just
for
don't
it.
care. They just don't care.
Yeah.
We just don't matter.
except we mattered enough in the first book, and we still matter enough for them to
I
fight.
mean,
But you're right, we don't matter to them. Oh, and I still want my brain pal. I think that would be a really nice, fun thing to have. I know you think
I
it'd be
mean,
weird, Red, but
I'm so anti brain pal. I cannot even.
I look forward to the eventual transhumanism that will happen. I mean, I'm already
No.
part cyborg with my my
that's
seeing
right.
robot here.
and no brain pal for John, but yes, one for Jane still. So
How's he gonna watch Bugs Bunny now?
that's right. No way to
It's
do it.
it's very sad. It's very sad. If you like this book, what else would you recommend? That's not the sequel. Lammy?
Yeah,
I
no, I've got a real one this time.
Okay.
But Chesky,
Oh,
you
I was
had
gonna
something?
say, yeah, I recommend the first book, and
That no! Jeez!
I also recommend Red Shirts by John Scalzi. That was a really fun one. He does write good books, even though I didn't like this one. I really do like to read his books. They are good.
I think you'll like this one better after you read the next one.
Okay.
My recommendation, if you liked this book, is a Heinlein book. You'll remember that the first book of this series was basically Heinlein fan fiction. So I would recommend Tunnel in the Sky, which is a young adult Heinlein book. It's about some high school students going on their survival final to eventually become colonists. They are sent through a portal to an uncolonized world, and they have to survive there for anywhere from 2 to 10 days. But a glitch happens. They get sent to a completely different world than what was intended, and it's Heinlein's direct response to Lord of the Flies.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, that is
And
interesting.
I really enjoyed it. It's been a long time since I read it, so it may not hold up in the way that my brain thinks it did. It shares a lot of similarities with this book, and it's also a direct response to Lord of the Flies, which absolutely counters the Lord of the Flies every man for himself philosophy.
That is not what that anyway. I'm gonna disagree with you about Lord of the Flies.
I mean, if you
All
want to
right.
read Lord of the Flies, we can talk about that sometime too.
I would be down. Because I actually really like that book. So I would recommend Shards of Honor by Lois McMaster Bujold. Also Power Politics and War and Fighting Over a Planet. And just anything by her is amazing. So now it's time for shameless plugs. Lammy, where can people find you?
On a weekly basis, I host the Cosmere Deep Dive Podcast, which can be found most places that have podcasts. I hope all places that have podcasts, but I don't know where we're not yet. You can also join our Discord by going to patreon.com/CosmereCast, CosmereCast. You don't have to give us money, but if you do, we'd appreciate it.
Lend me some money if you have it. Chesky?
Uh, yes, you can find me in the Legendarium Discord 99% of the time, but I do my own podcast called Libromancy. Basically, I just talk about fun books that I've read, and I don't give a very critical eye on any of them for the most part, but I like to talk about them. Lots of people like to listen, I hope. It's a lot of fun.
May or may not have a project coming out in a few months. So we'll find out. As well as Green Team, where you can always find me. Thank you so much for listening to us. Please consider donating to the Legendarium via Patreon. And a link to our Discord can be found on thelegendarium.com. The music is by Galactic Damages by Jingle Punks. Thanks, Craig, for loaning us a little corner of your empire, and a shout out to Horizon Brave for starting it all. And for Lammy and Chesky, I'm Little Red Book. Good night.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye.
Guys, I'm going to have to step away for 5. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay. Is her food home? I think her food's home.
Her food might be home. Yeah, that's
Number one
that's
son went to go
important.
get Chinese food.
Ooh, I wonder what
And
kind of
apparently
Chinese food.
apparently she didn't order, like she's just getting something of a mystery from here, like whatever he got for her.
Oh boy.
Yeah.